Welcome to BKL Nightly. This is the game day recap edition. I'm joined by Josh Reed and Carl Jones. Caleb Carr will be on a little later on. And, well, this is going to be a heck of a debut, guys, because that game was as crazy as you could ever draw it up. Bills win 41-40. They were down 15 points with basically 4 minutes to go. Yes, they were on the goal line, but it was still 4 minutes to go. Let me start with this. Josh, you and I have covered a gazillion games. What was your reaction to watching all this unfold?
You know, my first thought was it was a little fitting, right? It's the final home opener here at Highmark Stadium. There's been a ton of football played in this stadium, a lot of memorable games played in this stadium. It almost felt a little magical. It felt a little bit like, man, in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years from now, we're still going to be talking about, hey, do you remember the home opener in 2025 when it looked like the Ravens were just going to plunder.
And any P word will suffice
it's 1
here.
a.m.
Yes.
This is what you're getting from me right now. Yeah, but I mean, it just looked like they were going to run right over the Bills, and somehow, some way, because of number 17, they figure out a way to win, and it's going to go down as one of those games to me that we just always look back on fondly and go, they just found a way to do it.
You talked about this up in the press box, that entire 3.5-hour sequence. As long as the Bills have 17, they can make something happen right before halftime. I don't know if there's any other quarterback outside of the guy on the other sideline and Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City where the head coach allows the team with no timeouts to go down the field in 33 seconds. I don't know how many coaches allow a team or allow their quarterback to make the plays that they made in that fourth quarter. Only about 3-4 guys on planet Earth can do that, and the Bills fans are spoiled to have 17.
How about this? Sean McDermott spoke to the media after the win, and he actually admitted that at one point on 4th and 17 late in the game, he thought about giving Josh Allen a chance to make a play and get a first down. He ended up electing to punt the ball, and it all worked out fine. But that says a lot right there that he thought, I think Josh might be able to pull this off. That's wild.
The thing that I thought about, two things. Number one, I can't believe that there is a week 1 game that I will sit my grandkids down and be like, let me tell you the story of this. But secondly, all the little things that piled up to make that happen. The Ravens missing an extra point off the goalpost late. The different 2-point conversions made and missed on both sides that really, led to this situation. The Bills pulling a field goal out of their backside at the end of the first half in a spot where you thought they'd never had a chance. Being able to figure out run defense finally after 51 minutes of getting pummeled, whatever the word is, right, all day. All those things build up to this finish, and yeah, there's some magic too. But
how about the catch? It happened right in front of you.
I mean, that was the actual underlying magical part of it. The triple deflection, I think it was 2 deflections, and Keon Coleman had to make a heck of a grab to make it. Yeah, that was the actual magical part, but still, there were so many things that added up to it, and you think if any one of them goes the other way, this game probably doesn't end this way. Let me talk about this. Of all the things the Bills did well late, and we're going to have weeks, if not months, to talk about the things they did poorly. Of the things they did well late, what was the one that impressed you the most?
I think just the way they executed down the stretch. Because you hear Sean talk a lot about how you learn by failing a lot of times, and you learn by going and you grow through failure. And we've seen times since Sean took over where the execution hasn't been really good at the end of games. And this was spot on. Now, look, I know they had to catch a lot of breaks, but I think of how they get down close to the goal line there, and they knew exactly what they wanted to do in order to make the Ravens burn through their timeouts and then rush their kicker out there to kick the game-winning field goal. I thought it was really well played, and I feel like they had a strategy, and they stuck with it, and it played out perfectly. That was one of the things that maybe is the strategy and how it kind of played out, and Sean McDermott really managing the game there at the end and figuring out a way to get this win.
Yeah, for me, it's the Bills' passing game in the fourth quarter. The last time we saw this team in that fourth quarter against Kansas City at Arrowhead Stadium, the passing game was nowhere to be found. They're throwing bubble screens. They're throwing screen passes on 3rd and long. They're trying to manufacture anything in the passing game. And here in the fourth quarter, we don't know much about this Ravens defense. It's week 1, but I can tell you for certain they have at least 3-4 dudes in that secondary. And the fact that they walked down the field time after time in that fourth quarter, I don't know how sustainable this is. This is week 1. There are no overreactions on either side. But that is super impressive because the last time we saw this Bills offense, they struggled to and got to have his situations pass the ball.
And it was their 3 main receivers, right? Coming into the season, we talked about, hey, look, there's 3 kind of guys that you think are
Jackson
certainties.
Hawes.
Jackson Hawes. What a play. There's another storyline,
Yeah.
right? A 29-yard catch down the field where he just out jumps a defender to make that catch. But, I mean, you know, the three certainties on the outside that we thought the Bills had, those were the guys that made the plays.
For me, you know, you talk about incredible plays or doing things that are unlikely. The Ed Oliver fumble is as unlikely as it gets. The whole building knows that the only play the Bills really have is forcing a fumble there. You can make an argument there was still time, and maybe there was time, whatever. But everybody on defense knows they have to get a turnover. Everybody on offense knows they have to get a turnover. Everybody knows it's going to be a run. Everybody knows who it's going to. And still, Ed Oliver makes that play. A.J. Epinesa talked about how intentional you have to be to pull that off. You know, of all the things that were unlikely to make this happen, short of the deflected touchdown catch, that to me is number 2. And that's not a lucky bounce. That's a play that you have to be a bigger man to make against probably the biggest man in the NFL, right? Let me, the last thing I want to talk about with you guys, Matt Prater walking in here late. You know, he's 41. You know, who knows? He's got to be thinking 2 weeks ago, do I even have any football left in me? And then he gets plopped into this game. It wasn't just the kick he had to make at the end. Again, he had to make everything else leading up to this to be able to make this happen. Of all the guys who were impressive, you know, the list is lengthy, but it's just a cool story to think about. This guy was the one that finished off for Buffalo.
It was unbelievable. What a story. He's 41 years old. Sean said after the game that on Friday's practice, he would watch some of the offense, defense, and then turn to watch Prater kick in here just because he wanted to see what it looked like. I mean that was 2 days ago.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just wild. Talking to some of the players and everything about Prater, in particular, like Reed Ferguson, you know, just raved about him. One of the other guys, Khalil Shakir, I said, hey, what do you think about Prater coming in here, short week, and ends up making all of his kicks and makes the game-winning field goal? He said, I mean, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I thought he was a coach the first time I saw him. I mean, so, but they all seemed to really rally around him and thought that was really, you're right, that's a really cool story.
To pull off a comeback like this, you need all three faces to do their part. Obviously, there are certain phases of the game that didn't hold their weight for most of the game, but they made a play or two when they needed it most. And when the oldest guy to ever don a Bills jersey caps off a Week 1 win in 2025, that's just fitting.
How about this? Walking into the locker room when they open up the doors for us to walk in, defensive coordinator Bobby Babich and I just happened to be walking in together, and he looks at me and goes, and I go, I mean, it's a win. He goes, I mean, I guess we could be in the other locker room.
That's right.
It's better to be in this one. And I said, that's right. Obviously, they know they have a long way to go on that side of the ball, but it's better to be 1-0 with things to work on than 0-1.
And that's the point I want to end with this. Like, tonight is about the comeback. Like I said, we'll have plenty of time to discuss what Derrick Henry and this offense did for the better part of 3.5 quarters. But tonight, like you said, magic, Week 1 of what could be an incredible season. One of the games that we will always talk about the fact that we were at. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, Caleb Carr will join me. We've got a gazillion more things to get to with this game. Thanks to Josh and Carl. We're back on BKL Nightly after this. We are back on BKL Nightly, the game day recap edition, wrapping up the Bills' incredible comeback win over the Ravens, 41-40 the final. I'm joined now by Caleb Carr. And Caleb, you know, the first question that we're going to ask anyone who was involved in this game in any way is, what did you think of what happened? So I'll let you have the floor now. Give me your reaction to watching this thing unfold.
Oh my gosh, this is going to be a game that I think Bills fans, football fans, are going to remember for a very, very long time. This was just one of those games that you're, oh my, like it's just a roller coaster of emotions. I was in the process of getting myself ready for our news date at 11 o'clock hit, and so I was kind of in and out watching all these big plays, and I'm like, oh dang, looks Lamar Jackson, an incredible scramble for a first down. Oh, looks like that's going to do it. Oh, maybe not. Oh, and a missed extra point. Okay, maybe not. And then it's just Josh Allen being Josh Allen and hitting his guys, and Joshua Palmer and Keon Coleman stepping up, and the defense just making incredible plays. And then just to cap it off by Matt Prater, what is he, 41 years old, I think, getting the insane field goal to win the game. I mean, this is a game that, as a Bills fan myself, it almost heals a little bit of what was broken in like games like the 13-second game. It almost heals that a little bit. But just an incredible game, one that myself, Bills fans, football fans, this is going to be one that, I mean, I know it's only week one, but game of the year, potentially, already.
It's going to be nearly impossible to stop, or to top, I should say. You talk about fixing what was broken with 13 seconds. How about fixing what was broken in the third quarter tonight? I mean, that's part of this too. And you talk about amazing games. I was on the field for 13 seconds when Travis Kelce makes the game-winning touchdown. He lands at my toes. For me to say I was on the field for that game and this game's number two only because it's not a playoff game. But I don't know how anything else I ever see will reach either of these two games. It was amazing to say I was, that close to both of them. The Keon Coleman deflected touchdown happened like 3 feet in front of me, basically. It was just an amazing experience. All right, let's break down some of the X and O parts of this game, how it came to be. And I think, look, for all the bad the defense had, and like I said, we'll talk about the bad, in the days and weeks and months to come. For all the bad that happened in this game, Ed Oliver largely was not part of it. I mean, I'm sure the entire defensive line is going to take some blame for the 2,000 yards it felt like Derrick Henry had, but Ed Oliver was the one who was consistently making plays in this game, and Caleb, he had the biggest one, forcing that fumble at the end of the game.
Oh, yeah. From the beginning of the game to the end of the game, you start at the very beginning, Baltimore's first drive. It looks like they're just going to cruise down the field, and he's there to get the sack on Lamar Jackson, stall that drive, force a field goal, and then it just felt like every once in a while you were like, oh, there he is again. There he is again. There he is again. And, of course, he capped it off with punching that ball out at the end, getting that out of Derrick Henry, which, honestly, watching Derrick Henry get the handoff, you're, as a Bills fan, as anyone watching that game, you're like, okay, here we go. He's just going to run all over them again. He's going to have another 50-yard rushing touchdown, and this game's going to be over. But no, Ed Oliver, if he had anything to say about it, that was not going to happen.
And Ed Oliver, stepped up like a star should. He played like a game-changing player should. We didn't see that a lot from him last year. The year before, I thought he had a long stretch where he was amazing. Not so much last season, but in this game, over and over and over, he had those types of plays. Another guy who didn't have as many, but had at least a couple, was Joey Bosa. And look, I think the fumble he forced, although it didn't cause a turnover, you think about how that sequence played out. He forces the fumble on Justice Hill. The Ravens have to get backed up into, 2nd and 20 or whatever it was. If you're still in regular down and distance, there's a good argument that the Ravens, the way they played offense, probably score a touchdown there. So not only does it save the 4 points of the touchdown, but because the Ravens got stopped right there, it gave the Bills just enough time to come down and get a field goal, which turned out to be super key at the end of this game as well. So that's like a 7-point play. And Joey Bosa talked later about how, he knows there are things he needs to do better. He regretted not being able to take Lamar Jackson down on the crazy scramble that Jackson had in the fourth quarter early. But that play by Bosa, among the many that turned this into a win for the Bills, you could argue was among the top 2 or 3.
Oh, by far. Joey Bosa, just like Ed Oliver, it felt like whenever there was a big play, he was somewhere in that vicinity. And to your point with the forced fumble the fumble that he forced that ended up going back to Baltimore, even just a little different viewpoint, even something like that, it's a new guy. This is his first game at Highmark. And although Baltimore got the ball back, the fact that we saw him go out there and do something like that, if he can keep doing things like that, the ball is going to bounce in Buffalo's way. It will happen. So if he can continue to make plays like that, just to be able to see him make that play gives me a lot of confidence in him, because, there were some question marks about what Joey Bosa could do this year. There were some question marks about, is he going to stay healthy? And obviously those question marks are still there, but there were some question marks about, like, is he going to be able to be the Joey Bosa that we saw in his prime with the Chargers? And tonight, I thought, was at least a step towards showing us that, yes, he definitely still is that guy, and he definitely can still be that guy for Buffalo.
It was a flash, at least. It may not be Joey Bosa getting a prime game, but we got a flash of what he can be. And against the run, too. You thought about Joey Bosa when the Bills signed him as, okay, he's going to play on 3rd and 7 and then sit in bubble wrap for the rundown just to make sure he doesn't get hurt in the sideline. But that was a play against the run that turned out to be a big-time, game-changing play. Let's go to the offensive side of the ball. Look, I don't know how much we want to talk about Josh Allen. I mean, everything feels like it's been said, even though this was an entirely different level. Is there anything about what Josh Allen did in this game? Exactly, that's fine. I get that. Well, let me put it to you this way then. Is there anything about what Josh did in this game that I'm not going to say was better or greater, but was unique about the way he led this rally?
Oh, geez, unique. I mean, just the ability to not give up. I don't know if that's incredibly unique. And then, another, again, not unique, but just how he distributed the ball. You saw Jackson Hawes, a rookie tight end who's known for blocking, make a incredible catch on the goal line to put him at the 1-yard line. And that was, again, I keep wanting to say play of the game, because there were so many plays that I felt like were huge turning points and huge momentum pieces, and they can't all be the play of the game. But that was a huge play to get them and just keep that momentum rolling and help them get in the end zone. But then, obviously your Coleman, your Shakir, your Palmer, those were guys that had big plays. But Hawes, Knox, Elijah Moore, even Ty Johnson a little bit, they were all getting in on the action, and, just the everybody eats mentality. So I guess it's not really unique from what we've seen in the past, but just the ability to continue to do that. I think the biggest point is with new guys, continuing to have that everyone eats mentality with new faces in the room, with Joshua Palmer, Jackson Hawes, even Elijah Moore. Just having those new faces and still being able to continue that everybody eats mentality, I think is huge for the projection of the rest of the season.
I agree. I think it's a great call that when you think about the cast of characters, it's a little different, but the result still is the same. Mm-hmm. Josh Allen doing amazing things. The unique part of it for me was after the game. I posted this video to both my Instagram and my X feed, Thad Brown 7, if anybody wants to watch. But Josh Allen going person to person celebrating after the game. Joey Bosa, Matt Prater, Mitch Trubisky, just guy after guy. I've never seen Josh that excited, that gassed up after a win. And they've had some pretty big wins, not, as crazy as this one for sure. But that to me was the unique part of it for Josh. And then, of course, you ask him a question about it afterward, and he drops right back into cliche world with the quarterbacks, which I totally respect. But at least you got a moment of seeing Josh Allen appreciate how crazy this win was with the way he celebrated with his teammates afterward. And, with this offense, the way they rolled down the field, Carl Jones talked about it in the first segment. This was not, the Bills made it look way easier than it should have. This is a Ravens defense that should be able to take away at least some of what the Bills did in the passing game, and the Bills still found a way. And let's talk about the receivers who helped make it happen. I think for a large portion of this game, Keon Coleman and Josh Palmer had very quiet games. And then at the end, both guys, really stepped up, like you said, with multiple plays. I will say this, Caleb. Most of the time watching that late stuff, I thought for a large part of this game, it was going to fall into the category of garbage time. I'm sure there are a number of plays where the Ravens were just playing deep, letting Keon turn around at 7 to 10 yards and make an easy catch. We'll look at the film later and figure that out. But regardless, just as much as when the Bills need to play from Josh Allen, they got him from those receivers too.
Oh yeah, huge plays. And like you said, you look at the Keon Coleman, 8 receptions for 112 yards. You do wonder how much of that is the Ravens playing deep and that. But even aside from that, Coleman made one of the biggest plays of the game. Again, back to that play of the game thing. Coleman made one of the biggest plays of the game. He beats the guy inside. I'm glad that he got stumbled up. because it looked like he was going to run into the end zone. I don't know if he has enough experience yet to not run into the end zone. So I'm glad that he got stumbled up. Yes.
Right.
I'm glad that he got stumbled up and had to stop there. But that set them up for an easy kick. I mean, still a huge play from Palmer before to get them into field goal range, but that was still going to be a very deep kick for Prater. It was still going to be a very tough kick. So that play by Coleman to get them even closer was huge. But like you said, kind of slow at the start, and that's kind of what you expect from a Bills offense in week 1 against a really good Baltimore Ravens team. Is there's going to be some bumps in the road, but I thought that when they all needed to step up, Coleman, Shakir, Palmer, they all did, and when all three of those, plus James Cook, plus Josh Allen, plus the defense, when they all step up at the same time, you get stuff like a 15-point comeback.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the underrated turning points of this game, and I'll go back to, the play at the end of the first half where the Bills got a field goal, on a drive that was 25 seconds and no timeouts, from their own 27-yard line, I think it was. The play at the end of the half where the Bills have 7 seconds and the Ravens drop everyone 10 yards off the line of scrimmage and just say, we're not even going to rush you. You can't find someone in this zone. And Josh Allen still did. And again, you look back how big those 3 points were coming up at the end of the game. I think we don't appreciate how difficult it was for the Bills to be able to grab a field goal at the end of that first half.
Yeah, that was a huge play. That was just, and I think that was as much Josh Allen making the right play, making the right throw, as it was Dalton Kincaid finding some space. I think the Ravens were expecting the Hail Mary there, and I thought that was a great play design by Joe Brady to get somebody open, and Dalton Kincaid was the right guy to get in there and get to that sideline, and Allen just made a spectacular throw, which isn't anything new. Josh Allen does that all the time. But yeah, that right there was a big point for me too, because you're looking at that, and if they don't get that, they're down 10 points going into the half, and Baltimore has the ball back, which they ended up scoring a touchdown at the start of the third quarter. So if you think they don't get that, now you're down 17 points with zero momentum. And I mean, it's not that much better than down 14 points with not much momentum, but just that little bit of momentum that gave them obviously was enough to carry them through the rest of the game.
It certainly was enough to keep them in touch, and
Yes.
I think that's what the Bills needed to do. Obviously, it wasn't good enough in 99% of the circumstances to win a game. You needed that, and then you needed a miracle, which is what the Bills got. Regardless, though, if you don't keep in touch, then you don't even have a chance to have the miracle happen, so at least give the Bills credit for doing that through 3 quarters. The other turning point of this one that kind of stood out to me, the first Ravens drive when the Bills punted with about 9 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. The Ravens are up 14-15. It was 2 scores and some change there. And they had just forced, the Bills to punt in a spot where, only 4th and crazy would force a punt. It was 4th and 17. That Ravens drive was as bad as it gets when it comes to trying to put a game away. They handed the ball off twice off tackle, and granted, they had averaged like 10 yards a carry. You would think that those would still be okay plays, but it was a very conservative possession. It ended with a penalty that helped stop the clock. The Ravens maybe didn't run off the last 20 or 30 seconds that they could have in that possession. That to me was the start of where I was kind of like, the Ravens kind of feel like, or it seems like they feel like this game is done. And you've seen the Bills. Just watch the Rams game from last year. You know that even though they didn't win that game, they made it interesting for a long time. You can't take your foot off the gas, and it felt like the Ravens were doing it right in that spot.
Yeah, you can never take your foot off the gas against this Bills team. You can never stop downing them. And with that, like Josh Allen said post-game, a lot of the fans left. So it kind of, I think that kind of goes in part with like, the Ravens kind of felt the vibe start to go down. They felt like the fans were leaving. They start to feel the energy go down on the Bills sideline. And I think that kind of went into that. But the defense, they were like, nah, we're going to keep going. And as soon as that stop happened, they have a 10-play drive to go down the field and get a touchdown. And now they're within 1 score. And as soon as that drive gets cooking, you could just feel the energy start to build. I mean, I'm sure, obviously I wasn't there. I'm sure you could feel the energy a little more than I could from sitting watching on a screen. But you could just feel the energy start to grow. And I agree with you that that's really where they started to take off.
I'll get to the energy point in a minute. I just want to finish up on the defense real quick, or that sequence with this. As bad as the defense was against the run most of this game, being able to stop Derrick Henry on those last few plays, the 2 on that drive I brought up, and then later on and a couple more. The only thing the Ravens did offensively late in this game was Lamar scrambles, essentially, and a pass that was a little short on 3rd and long. They were able to, at least when it mattered at the very end, take that run away, give the defense credit for that. As for the energy, there wasn't a whole lot. Let me tell you, people are going to talk about how crazy the crowd was, and it was at the end. But when the Bills scored to go down 40-32, it was kind of like a golf clap. I don't think many people, even the people who were still here, thought the Bills had a legit chance. And even when they got in the field goal range, I could hear the people who were close behind me on the field, there was a little more of like, is this really happening? Don't screw this up. It was more uncertainty and disbelief than there was, and the noise kind of, reflected that. Also, the fact that there was 50,000 people in here, probably not 70,000. Either way, it was not nearly the cheer you would think it would have been. Now, when the kick goes through the uprights, it was as crazy as you could get. But again, the fans were down. The stadium was down 15-20% of capacity. So it wasn't, I've heard many cheers that are louder than what I heard tonight, but it was still amazing to be a part of. All right, Caleb, we're going to wrap this up here. Any final thoughts from you, about this game, what it means going forward for the Bills after pulling this off against the Ravens?
Just the final thing I think is Sean McDermott said at postgame the Bills posted a clip of him in the locker room kind of giving a motivational speech to the team afterwards. And he said, he always looks for a game like this that brings a team together early in the season. And for it to happen week 1 and for it to happen to this team who has a lot of new faces but still has very, very high expectations, I think a game like this is, to win a game like this is bigger than if they would have gone out and blown them out 40-10. I don't think we would be having the same conversation. To win a game in the way that they won tonight is going to bring these guys together, and I think it's sky's the limit at this point for what that they can do, having already gone through something like this.
I think it's a great point. I'm not topping that. I think it's the best way to end the show. I will add one more thing. It was fun to watch the Joey Bosa's and the Josh Palmers and the guys who haven't seen the Josh Allen experience up close kind of shake their head and laugh and just say, I can't believe this is how it really is. And now, look, this was a 1 in a million kind of thing, but still, it was fun to see the realization for these guys that, wow, we're going to do this again next week, aren't we? All right. Speaking of that, we'll do this again next week as well. Exactly. For Caleb Carr, Josh Reed, and Carl Jones, I'm Thad Brown. Thanks for watching BKL Nightly, the Game Day Recap Edition. We will talk to you again tomorrow, today. I don't even know what time it is, but sometime soon. Talk to you later.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 On Demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.